Good evening, folks. How are you? This is Colin. It's live from the loft, back again. Monday night, just about 9:30. We will make a start in about 90 seconds. A special programme this week because we are coming live from London. So it's going to be a wee bit different, but very much looking forward to the programme. Lots to talk about. Unfortunately, we cannot take calls this evening, although you can, of course, send me a tweet. And to do that, it is just at Colin Kelly. So you can get your tweets in over the next half hour at Colin Kelly. I'm hoping that the technology holds up tonight. Obviously, we're not in the comfort of the loft, where we know the technology inside out. We're at a secret location, which I will tell you more about in just a second. I'll explain exactly what we're doing this week, and looking forward to an interview with the author Kerry Hudson, who has written a new book. It's called Thirst. It's her second novel. She's already had quite a lot of success with her debut novel, which is called Tony Hogan Bought Me an Ice Cream Float Before He Stole My Ma. That came out a couple of years ago. The new one is called Thirst, and tonight's programme will feature an extensive interview with Kerry Hudson, and you can check her out on Twitter. She is at Kerry's Window, so Kerry S Window, if you'd like to catch up with the author, Kerry Hudson, who is our special guest on the programme tonight. It is now exactly 9:30, and a very warm welcome to another Live from the Loft with me, Colin Kelly. Let me just show you where we are this evening. Here we are at a secret location. I am unable to divulge my exact location this evening, but we're here. We are in the heart of London. We're in North London, and we are in fact broadcasting, or I am broadcasting from just around the corner from a very famous house. The house previously owned by Mr. Noel Gallagher of Oasis. The house, the address is in Steeles Road in London, and when he was there he called it Supernova Heights, and that house became one of the kind of leading locations for the whole Britpop era in the late 1990s. So, and that house is now owned by the comedian David Williams from Britain's Got Talent. So I am literally round the corner from that house, and I cannot say any more than that. So it is, I suppose, a kind of an underground broadcast this evening. I'm hoping that the technology holds up. If there's any problems with it, do please tweet me. Let me know. It is at Colin Kelly if you would like to be sending me a tweet this evening. And next Monday night we will be back in our normal location, the security and warmth of the loft. But tonight, live from London, I'm down here on business. I've got one of my workshops that I'm running in London tomorrow. Saw a great bit of television earlier on. Well, actually, I was out. I nipped into one of the pubs just down the road in London, and they were doing this thing. I noticed that they keep behind the bar a huge assortment of mobile telephone chargers. Every single one you could ever possibly think of are all there, kept behind the bar, and which I thought was quite a good service. You know, if you go into this particular pub and your phone goes flat, you can very easily recharge it, which is a good service, and probably all pubs should be offering that. And then I got some tweets about this, because I said a tweet, and Susie at Susie Crumleys came back to me on Twitter, and she said, it's a good idea. This is at Susie Crumless, and further proof that we're unable to disconnect. And she said, I wonder how successful this alternative is, though. And it was it's a flyer that she's found, a picture she's found in a pub, and it says, we don't have Wi-Fi, talk to each other, with a smiley face, which I thought was quite clever. So I was kind of mulling this over in my brain as I wandered up the road back here to my secret location. And then I turned on the television, and they had a programme that was showing down here. It's a bit like the One Show, but kind of London version. And they did a whole feature all about a gadget detox. And it was like a kind of a fitness, well, not just a fitness camp, but I guess an emotional awareness camp, a communication camp, where you had to lock your mobile phone in a box at the start of the weekend, and then they led you through exercises where you actually had to talk to each other, talk to new people, and look them in the eye for a certain amount of time, and it all looked quite interesting. So I thought I would ask tonight, where do you go to detox from all this technology? Is there a safe haven? Is there somewhere where you find sanctity. And the mobile phone, you're not even tempted to, you maybe can't get a signal. For me, it's probably going up to my parents' house on Skye, because I can't get a mobile signal at all, and I'm quite happy with that. I do still occasionally log in and check my emails, because they do have Wi-Fi. But because I can't get a phone signal, I find it a bit easier to switch off. So that's my question to you this evening. Where do you actually go to switch off? I know some people who quite enjoy just the peace and quiet of the train or the car journey into work in the morning, but then I know other people that are there and they're listening to podcasts and they're doing work and stuff on the journey. So where do you go to completely switch off? And I actually tried a gadget detox when I worked at, for the Hour on STV. I tried to go a week without any technology. I locked it all in a fish tank, and the truth is I broke into it a few times, because they foolishly, for emergency purposes, they left me the key, in case I really needed my phone. And I did go in a couple of times and have a wee check. It's like that feeling, you used to get that feeling if you went away on holiday for 2 weeks, maybe out of the country, and just as you were kind of turning around the corner and coming home, you'd think, oh, there'll be piles and piles of mail. I wonder if there's any good stuff. I wonder if anything's interesting's been happening since I've been away. And you'd get home, and once you turned the water back on and, warmed up a bit and changed the sheets in the bed, got yourself all comfy, got some milk in, then you would go through all the mail. And in those days, there'd actually be interesting stuff. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. And because we are connected so often, you never really have that feeling where you've been away. So that doesn't happen so much anymore. But how do you turn off from the gadgets? Where is your sort of safe haven where you maybe don't go on the Wi-Fi and you can't get connected? So unfortunately, no phone calls this evening, but you can, of course, tweet me, and I hope that you will. It is just at Colin Kelly as we broadcast live from this very nice, I have to say, although I've got all the lights off for secret reasons, it is a very nice location I'm in London. It's just that if they knew what I was doing, I don't think they'd be too pleased. So I'm having to be quite quiet and a wee bit incognito this evening. But we are live from London, just round the corner from Noel Gallagher's old house. So quite cool. Right, now my special guest this evening is a wonderful Scottish author. Her name is Kerry Hudson. And she's had amazing success. She's 33 now. I hope she doesn't mind me saying that. So still quite a young writer, and she had amazing success with her first novel, which was called Tony Hogan Bought Me an Ice Cream Float Before He Stole My Ma, which, if it didn't win any prizes for its what's inside the covers, then surely the name should win a prize. But her new book is called Thirst, and I'm reading it just now, and it's absolutely fantastic. I heartily recommend it. I am one of these guys that doesn't read a lot of fiction. I read lots of magazines and biographies and business books, but this book has really charmed me, and it's lightened up my life a wee bit, and I'm about halfway through, and I feel better for reading this book. So it's called Thirst, and everybody should read it. It's only like £5 on the Google Play store. I'm sure it's around the same for the Kindle. So it's called Thirst, and it's by Kerry Hudson, and you should follow her on Twitter. She's a great Scottish writer. On Twitter she is Kerry's Window, at Kerry's Window, Kerry S Window. And I had a chat with Kerry the other day, which I'm going to play for you now, and I hope that you will very much enjoy this interview, and then we'll have a few minutes chat at the end of the evening before we go off air. So I do hope you'll enjoy this interview. This is Kerry Hudson telling me all about her new novel, Thirst.
So a lot in Britain, but also in Spain and in Tel Aviv as well. And so those first person accounts gave me, I guess, like a flavour of the voice of a woman who's been through this. And then I got an Arts Council grant from the English Arts Council to go across Russia. So partly, and that was partly because I wanted to research the trafficking aspect, which actually was really difficult. Getting anyone to meet with me was almost impossible. There aren't that many NGOs specializing in sex trafficking in Russia. It was much harder than I thought it was going to be to get people to even speak about anything like that anecdotally while I was there. But also, Dave goes on this big journey to Russia as well. I hope I'm not giving anything away for you there, Colin. So I wanted to research, and I'd never been to Russia at all, and it's a very unique place. So there's no way I could have captured the Siberia aspect without that. And then also another thing was that I really want to understand what sort of poverty drives you to make decisions that you know are maybe not right. Elena, when she comes to the UK, thinks she's coming for a job, but I think, she's a smart woman. Her mother, loves her and is an intelligent woman as well. You'd feel that there was something off, but there's a sort of desperation, I think, that makes you clutch at opportunities that seem too good to be true. And so certainly visiting, I went to a place called Omsk, which is one of the highest sort of Russian bride industries, if you like, in Russia. And it is genuinely one of the worst places I have ever been. I was only there for a day, and even I was like, if I had to live here, I wonder what I would do to try and get out of here. So that was the main body of my research.
But my experience of maybe encountering women in that situation in London is, as you might assume, fairly limited. But from what I've seen, the experience that they go through pretty quickly, it makes them quite tough, makes them quite hardened. Whereas your character, Elena, through all that she's been through, so far at least in the book, she's remained quite a nice person.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I totally agree with that, I like different interpretations, and actually there have been so many different interpretations of thirst. I mean, I think Elena as a character would be the first to say she has done terrible, terrible things, and maybe you haven't gotten to the crux of the things that she really has to do in order to survive. But I think that's what makes Elena partly unique, is that she never loses her hope. She keeps struggling on, and I think it's also worth saying that even though she has a terrible time when she gets to London, she doesn't have the experience that many girls have because she gets, without giving too much away, she gets a slightly preferential position. But I think, the truth is that I think that even people who go through terrible, terrible things, it still keep humanity at their core. And because Elena gets away, she's able to keep some of that, I think. And perhaps the truth is, the longer you're in those situations, the more desensitized you come, rather than being a cruel person. It's that you literally become, that part of your humanity dies slightly.
You've talked a lot about your own upbringing, coming from Aberdeen and your background there, and moving around a lot, and always being the new girl. And I guess, when you're a teenager and you're going through that, there's things you have to do to survive, whether it's, fit in at school, make friends, get noticed or not get noticed. Do you relate to Elena, or do you relate to Dave?
I relate a little bit to both of them, I travel a lot, and so I'm often the outsider and the observer in the country that I'm in, because I'm just obviously a foreigner and I don't speak the language, and I don't understand all the little, things that make up daily life often. If I want to go and buy, I don't know, a plug fuse, then that takes me 3 days. So I guess the outsider part of Elena, I really understood. And the vulnerability of being a woman, I really understood. Again, I travel a lot. Sometimes things happen. Like I was in Belgrade a few months ago, and a man followed me for like an hour around the city, and that felt very threatening, much more threatening, I think, than it would have done if I'd been a man. So that sort of sexual vulnerability, I think most women can relate with. And Dave's a council estate lad. He grew up with his mum who loved him fiercely, on accounts in a very sort of closely knit, council estate, but with, really very, very limited horizons for what he was going to be able to achieve. And in the end, even those were slightly denied him. So, my belief is that, I personally think, I don't want to speak for all writers, but I think many, many writers, most of their characters have some of them in them. I mean, they come directly from yourself and from your subconscious often. So it's inevitable they have huge chunks of you within them.
And when you were going through your childhood and moving around as much as you did, and coming from quite a disadvantaged background, did you have hope? Did you have dreams? And what were they?
I was very lucky. I grew up, as you say, is well publicised, in council estates and bed and breakfasts and caravan parks. And we moved an awful lot, so sort of shuttled up and down the country, a little bit like Janie Ryan in my first book. And so, some of the schools were great. Often they weren't that great. And certainly, there was a slight aspect of being written off before you'd even begun to think about what you wanted to do. But my mum was quite a remarkable woman. I realise now that I'm older and I can look back retrospectively. And so she told me all the time, do anything you want, do anything you want. So while there was definitely a sense, especially in my teens, that perhaps the world was closed to me and I was starting to get an inkling of that, I also on the other side had my mum saying, you just go do it. You just go do it. So I had a sort of counterbalancing effect there. And I had loads of dreams. I loved reading, but I mean, even in like the loftiest, pipiest of pipe dreams, like writing a book was just something that even my mum would have thought was sort of a laughable, lofty ambition. So I wanted to act when I was a teenager. Right. Actually, I wanted to be an actress. And I think that's because, there were working class people on TV. There was Coronation Street and EastEnders, and everyone knew about people with working class backgrounds who'd gone on to be actresses. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do when I was a teenager.
and so were you surprised? I mean, reading your blog, Kerry, you seem a wee bit surprised at the success and the good reception that both, particularly the first, but also now the second novel have enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I went off to write the book. I wrote it in 6 months in Vietnam. I took a sabbatical from the NGO job that I was working on at the time. And I did it because an agent had expressed interest that if I ever wrote a novel, then she would read it. But really, like, I went off to write it because it was on my bucket list. It was like something that I'd always wanted to do. And I had 6 months and I thought, well, I'll just write 1,000 words a day and then I'll have some form of a novel. And so that's what I did. So I was amazed when the agent signed me. And then I was even more amazed when a publisher signed me, especially Chatham Windus, who have actually just, Richard Flanagan they published Richard Flanagan, who just won the Booker. So they're a very literary publisher. And so I thought, well, they bought it, but no one will read it. And then people did read it, and it also went up for prizes and won a Scottish First Book. I was amazed, absolutely amazed. And those low expectations are partly just because I don't know, I mean, it's something that just never occurred to me would happen.
Well, it's really interesting, Kerry, because you are, I guess, you're being feted as an example of, an exciting new voice, and all of us in the media and in the creative sector, we all love it when a new voice arrives. And you are now doing your bit to bring on other new voices with your Woe Mentoring project. Do you wish something like that had existed when you'd been younger? Might we have had the first novel from Kerry Hudson sooner?
Potentially, I think. I didn't have, so I worked through my 20s, in the not-for-profit sector, and I worked my way up from sort of answering the phones to working as a project manager at the NSPCC. And I never really had any spare money. The not-for-profit sector doesn't pay that much, and I was living in London, which is terrifyingly expensive. And had I had little bits of money to pay for, say, a really good creative writing course or a professional mentor to sit down with me for 3 hours. If someone had said to me a lot earlier than they did, actually, you're quite good at this, actually, like, I'm a professional, I'm telling you, you're actually fairly good, then maybe that would have happened. I think the nice thing is that I think people do find their way to writing soon enough. If they're meant to write, then eventually they'll sit down and they'll respond to that urge. I think mentoring is a bit more about allowing women then access into the industry. I was very, very lucky that a friend of a friend of a friend who happened to be an agent heard about me winning a competition, and that is how I got that agent contact, who then spurred me on to go off to Vietnam and write the novel. But for many people, they just don't know anyone in publishing at all. And so this is a way of making that seem less like I have to call it like a city of ivory towers. It's about opening the gates a little bit to women who wouldn't have publishing contacts, or who would never even consider writing, to give them a professional to tell them, you can do this and you're good and let me give you a hand. Yeah.
Do you think that the publishing industry, because I mean I've experienced it, and I know lots of other people who send something off and the reply that comes back is, we're very busy and will be for quite some considerable time. That's the reply that I got that when I was younger, and I've heard it from lots of other people. I understand why they do it, but do you think they have more of a responsibility, not necessarily your publisher but other publishers and the industry in general, to be a wee bit more open and welcoming to new writers?
Do you know, I think they are. The truth is that the simple truth is that the people who want to write vastly outweigh whatever the publishing industry could possibly process. I cannot tell you how often I go out for a night out and I'll be like, maybe around a table of 10 people who all do different jobs. And at least 2/3 of them will say, I want to write a novel, or I'm writing a novel. And the truth is that once you start talking to people about it, everyone wants to write a novel. So I don't think it's that. And actually, what I should say about the mentoring scheme is that it's made up of professional editors, professional agents, and professional writers, and loads of them are right at the top of the game. So exactly the sort of people who are like, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this because I already work 60-hour weeks. So, you know, I can't think of a better example of 100 women who work professionally in publishing coming together to say, we know there's an issue with the fact that there isn't enough diversity in publishing, and we want to open up the gates a little bit. And this is their way of being able to do that. I do think the thing is that I do think publishing is aware that there's an issue there. Yeah. And so they're trying to address it, but it's a slow process because publishing houses are big, and like any big organization, there's loads of, you know, bureaucracy you have to go through to implement change. So I believe it's coming. Yeah. I'm hopeful.
Good. And great that the industry are all taking part, or so many of them taking part in Woe Mentoring. You mentioned London, and we're looking at London in our programme this week. And you were quoted in an interview saying that arriving in London was the first time you felt like you were home, or that you really felt that sense of belonging. What was it about London that made you feel that way?
I think so. I obviously moved around an awful lot, and we only ever really stayed. I think the longest we ever stayed anywhere was 3 years, to give you an idea. So when I arrived in London, I sometimes say that London is the city where all the black sheep go. You know, there are very few, really, there aren't that many native Londoners. Yeah. Most people have travelled there from somewhere else. So everywhere is an outsider adopting the city as its home. And also for me, like, I wanted to go somewhere where things felt limitless. You know, I'd grown up in council estates and B&Bs and in kind of often crappy schools that weren't really doing the best they could for their students, even though I should say the teachers were always doing their best, but you know, there's only so much you can do with what you've got. And so I wanted to, and then all of a sudden I arrived in London, and it was like, you know, it is, and it still is a city where anything can happen, and most, you know, people can do what they need to do. And I just, you know, I was overwhelmed by the opportunity and the choices and the diversity there. And I realised that that's kind of what I've been craving for, you know, all of my teams, really.
And the relationship between Scotland and London is a fascinating one, especially with the political situation. So many people up here moan about, you know, London gets this and London gets that. But then, you know, my experience is a wee bit like yours. When I then go, I've been down with work quite a bit, and your average working Londoner, I think, is very similar to your average working Scot from Glasgow or Aberdeen or Edinburgh or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and actually what I'd say is that London is becoming, although when I arrived, you know, over a decade ago in London, it felt it was a beautiful land of opportunity. The truth is that it's a really hard place to live as well. You know, like, it's becoming impossible to even rent a room in a house, not even dream of buying somewhere, but literally find a livable room in a house now. You know, and lots of the people who live there, but they hang on by their fingernails. I had a conversation with Gillian from Looking Glass Books in Edinburgh when I was up, and we said that all of our friends who live in London are, you know, manic with just trying to keep up with living there. So it has its negatives as well. But it's, you know, it's a very, I guess it's, I always think of London as sort of a country within a country, which I guess is you know, is exactly what Scotland is. It's got a very independent spirit, and that is a spirit that I think is celebrated. Yeah.
So Aberdeen and London and a lot of travelling. Vietnam for the first novel, Omsk in Russia for Thirst. Do you think travel's important if you want to do something creative?
Not necessarily for everyone. I've got lots of friends I've got one friend in particular, who's a young adult author, and he can really only work if he's in his little shed in Dorset from 9 to 5, you know. But for me, like I love to travel, and I think the more creative stimulus I have, then the better my work is. I think that, my brain would, you know, turn to mush if I was forced to sit in the same place every day and write. I would still do it, I should say, but for me personally, I think that traveling is a really good way to continue inspiring yourself and provoking ideas and examining the world around you. Yeah, no, I do. It's important for me, but I know that lots of other people like a very routine life, and that's the way that they get their writing done.
I think one of the things that got me interested in you, Kerry, and reading about what you were doing and where you were going, what you were writing, was I almost felt there's a wee bit of the journalist in you in terms of the places that you're attracted to. It's fair to say you're not going around the world seeing the sights. It's almost like you're seeking out stories, seeking out maybe slightly kind of darker, dirtier aspects of the world, and finding the human truth in it all. Would that be fair?
Yeah, possibly. That's quite interesting. I was saying to a friend the other day, you've got like guidebook tourists and non-guidebook tourists, and I definitely fall into the latter category. And actually, if you ever look at my pictures from traveling, they're always like sort of, you know, stray cats and bullet holes, buildings and smashed up windows. So yeah, no, you're probably not wrong there. I think, I mean, I'm in Lisbon at the moment. That's pretty beautiful. So I do combine it, but I think I'm interested in the real lives of wherever I go. I'm not really interested in the sort of shiny facade. I want to see the real guts of a place. And it's true that actually the places that I'm often most interested in, because of my sort of magpie-like interest in human intrigue, I guess, and human interaction, are places that are just more interesting for that. So I was recently in Sarajevo, which has a very recent and, you know, deeply tragic history, but then also encountered just some of the warmest, most generous people I've ever met there. Also, I spent some time in Palestine, which is quite the same. It was a good few years ago now, and I was there. And even though it was actually a time of relative stability for the region, you know, they were still under siege effectively, but still lived their life with such passion and energy and warmth and belief for the future. And that, I think, as a person, I find inspiring. So it's kind of inevitable that would come out in my writing. Yeah.
You mentioned Sarajevo. My wife and I had a couple of holidays just outside Dubrovnik in Croatia.
Yes.
And although it didn't experience anything like Sarajevo did, it was fascinating to see, you know, beautiful holiday apartments and beaches and everybody having a good time right in amongst bullet-ravaged, you know, communist buildings that had been absolutely gutted.
It's really shocking. And so the first place I saw that was in Mostar in Bosnia. And I was in a taxi and I saw, you know, just a shell of a building completely, as you say, riddled with bullet holes. And I swore in the taxi and the taxi driver must have heard me. And then the next building we passed was a brand new, like, beautiful academy building, and this is the school, isn't this beautiful? And you could see that he was trying to emphasize the positive in his town, which I find a bit heartbreaking. But yeah, I mean, it's really, but I think actually in a way it's quite important to keep those reminders around. You know, even though it must be hard for lots of people who experience the war to see them every day, I also think it's important for visitors to understand what's going on there. It would be a real shame if it turned into, you know, a sort of bells and whistles tourist place, because it's, you know, definitely I came away so quite changed, I think, from having understood what had gone on there, which is exactly how I came away from Palestine. It changes you a little bit as a person, I think, if you understand.
Yeah, and especially the former Yugoslavia so recently, and also Palestine, obviously, you know, ongoing now, all the time.
Yeah, terrible. Absolutely terrible.
What do you think is going to be next to you, Kerry? Obviously, the way that the publishing world and the life of a novelist works, you finished Thirst quite a wee while ago, and you're already on to book number 3.
I am, yeah, I'm about 50,000 words there. I thought you said there, Colin, and you're finished.
Oh,
And I
no.
was like, well, hold on there. It's only a first draft is done. Yeah. Do you know, honestly, Colin, who knows? I mean, that, as you say, it's the life of the novelist now. It used to be that you got paid a pretty chunky advance. You know, even like 10 or 20 years ago, you get paid a pretty decent advance, and that kept you going for a good few years. So if what you were writing wasn't totally working out, then that was okay because you could had a bit more time to work it out. Now it's much more typically, as it is the case for me, that I get a modest advance for each of my books, and I'm contract to contract. But you know, it's a lovely life. I would never complain. I think it's a real privilege to get to write books and have people read them and open their hearts and their minds to you. So next for me is so I'm in Lisbon at the moment, and I'm next up to South America for the final bit of my book research for book 3. And I'm about halfway through the book at the moment, so I hope to be finished sort of by mid next year. And then we will see from there.
Just finally, Kerry, before you go, there's a really good line in Thirst, which stuck with me, and it's Lena, and she's walking through the city. She's a bit pissed off, and she sees the people carrying the shopping bags and with the children with them, and basically their faces are tripping them. And I think the kind of point is, God, I'd do anything to be like them. And I read that line and I thought, my God, that was me yesterday. You know, coming home from work with my shopping and going home to see my kids and thinking, oh my God, life's so tough. And I thought, good grief, do you hope that by maybe reading your work, let's call them the middle classes with the privileged life, maybe realise how lucky they are?
Yeah, or even, I mean, I think, you know, personal appreciation for what you have is a very personal thing, I think. It's something good to strive for, I think, just remembering that if you've got food on the table and a roof over your head, you're luckier than a vast proportion of people. More than anything else, I hope that it changes people's preconceptions of other people. I think I could say it quite a lot in interviews, but I think it's because it's the best example of what I would hope to do if I'm hoping to do anything other than give people a good read. And that's that for my first book, a friend whose dad is a really hardcore Tory read the book, and he said she said it made him just a little bit less Tory. So if I can make everyone just a little bit less Tory, then I consider myself doing a very good job.
Well, that was the author Kerry Hudson speaking to me earlier on, all about her new novel, which is called Thirst. It's out now and it's a fantastic read. If you want to follow Kerry on Twitter, she is at Kerry's Window, to stay in touch with the excellent Kerry Hudson. And I'm reading that new novel from her, Thirst, just now, and it really is absolutely fantastic, well worth a read. Right, this is a special edition of Live from the Loft. We are live from London this week. We've been talking about detoxing from your gadgets, and of course we are broadcasting from this very strange secret location where I am keeping myself hidden this evening. We are a stone's throw from Steeles Road in North London, just off Haverstock Hill. Not far from the house that Noel Gallagher used to live in, and he christened it Supernova Heights. But I think it's better if people don't know the exact location that I'm in, hence the strange visual effects at the moment. But I hope you've enjoyed the programme this week. We will be back to normal and back to the Loft next Monday night at 9:30. A couple more things to tell you about before we go, and you can keep the tweets coming at Colin Kelly if you'd like to get a message through to me tonight. You can of course catch up with all our archive programmes. They're all online, colinkelly.net/live. That's the official website with all the information. You'll never miss anything if you visit there regularly, and all the old programmes are there, colinkelly.net/live. I need to give you a wee bit of radio news, and I need to say all the very best to my old radio friend Ewan Cameron, who is moving on after around about 4 years, I think, hosting the breakfast show on Heart Radio, right across central Scotland. Ewan is moving on to some exciting new projects, and I think Ewan is a great guy, a terrific broadcaster, so good luck to him. And taking his place at Heart is the former host of the Real Radio Breakfast Show, and most recently he's been at Clyde 1 and then moving on to Clyde 2 and networked right across Scotland is Robin Galloway. Robin was a huge hit on Real Radio and Scott FM before that, and also Robin's a good guy, great broadcaster too, so all the very best to him. Exciting times in a real rich area for broadcasting talent. You only need to look at how many radio presenters and TV presenters from Scotland are now plying the trade down here in London, and we're very lucky up in Scotland. The quality of broadcasters that we get to listen to, and of course don't forget BBC Radio Scotland as well. So that is it for this particular edition of Live from the Loft, live from London. Also, if you were one of the people a few weeks ago who came along to the Working Digital event for businesses that we ran in Kilmarnock, I can't tell you any more other than keep a close eye on the Working Digital Facebook page. I can't say any more than that, but make sure over the next couple of weeks that you keep a close eye on the Working Digital Facebook page if you were interested in that Working Digital event for businesses. The website as well is always worth keeping tabs on that, workingdigital.co.uk. That's it for Live from the Loft. Thank you so much to my special guest this week, Kerry Hudson. I'll be back with more next Monday night at 9:30, and you can access it all at colinkelly.net/live. From me, for now, a very good night.